Despite being disabled, George made it a daily routine to assist his daughter Julie with her baby. While Julie would occasionally come to pick him up, George would usually make his way to her house on his own, using his wheelchair. However, one day, disaster struck when his wheelchair got trapped on a set of train tracks. He feared for his life until a surprising rescuer came to his aid. After the devastating car crash that claimed the life of his wife, Bernice, George was left paralyzed and confined to a wheelchair. At the time of the accident, their daughter Julie was in her 20s and did all she could to offer assistance. However, George adapted quickly and learned to manage on his own. He mourned his wife, but Julie was not that far from him. She lived around 20 minutes away in Ames, Iowa. The only problem is that George had to wheel himself through to some train tracks to get there, but it was fine. He was still young at heart and loved the outdoor scenery of the area. A few years after his accident, Julie gave birth to a son, Joshua. Julie was a single mother and a serious career woman, so George decided to help out as much as he could, although she never asked him to. "Really, Dad? It's all right. I can do it on my own, or I can hire a sitter," Julie told him after he spent the entire day watching Joshua. "Darling, what else am I going to do all day? Why spend money on a stranger when I can be here with my grandson?" George responded. "Well, it takes you 20 minutes to wheel yourself here. You might feel young, Dad, but you're in your 50s already. That's a huge effort, and I'm sorry, but I can't pick you up every day too," Julie explained, exasperated with her father. "Don't worry about me. The exercise is good, and it's not a dangerous road at all," her father continued. "Yeah, not dangerous at all. There's only a big railway there, and you might get crushed by a train," Julie said sarcastically. "Again, it's fine. In any case, the train is never there when I pass, so it's not a problem," George added and cooed at Joshua as he fed him that morning. A few times a week, Julie drove Joshua to her father's house so he could babysit in his house, but her work was getting more demanding. She barely had time to sleep and arrange everything for the day, so it was simply more convenient for George to go to her place. But one day, George was running late himself. He overslept and noticed a considerable layer of snow outside. Julie called him as he was getting dressed. "Where are you?" she asked, frustrated. "Honey, I overslept, and it snowed last night. Can you pick me up?" George wondered. "I'm sorry, Dad. I have meetings all day. I need to rush out the door now. I'll leave Joshua with Mrs. Goldman next door," Julie retorted. "Don't worry then. I'll pick him up as soon as I get there. It might take a little longer than usual. Just tell Mrs. Goldman that I'm coming," George insisted. "Fine. See you later," Julie replied and hung up. George started the journey to Julie's house. It was slower than usual due to the snow, but nothing too bad. However, his wheel wouldn't budge at a certain point. "Oh man," George mumbled when he noticed what happened.
Also, if you've not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these animal stories every day. Now, back to the story.
One of his back wheels got stuck on a wonky part of the rail track. He usually avoided it but got distracted by the snow. "Come on, come on, come on," he chanted, trying to pry himself off. He couldn't, and it was dangerous. It was much later than usual, and a train could be headed his way. George grabbed his phone and dialed Julie, but it went to voicemail. He didn't know Mrs. Goldman's number. Suddenly, he heard the distinctive sound of a train coming through the railway. Even the tracks started vibrating. George pulled as hard as he could, but nothing could budge his wheelchair. "Oh no, the train won't be able to stop even if the conductor sees me," he thought desperately. Suddenly, a man in uniform appeared out of nowhere and quickly tried to pry his chair from the track. "Ah, this is stuck," the man shouted. The train was getting closer, and they still hadn't moved. "Leave, sir. You'll get run over too." "It's no use," George yelled at him, but the man grabbed him and hefted his body, groaning at the older man's weight. They both fell on the snowy ground next to the track just as they heard the crunch of the wheelchair as the train crushed it. Both men were breathing heavily as George looked at his savior. Thank you so much. I didn't even see you coming, but thank you," he gasped. "Don't mention it, sir. It's my job. I'm Police Officer Daniel Bradford," the cop explained. "It's nice to meet you. I'm George. he replied. "Why were you out in this weather? And why didn't you take a better route?" "Going through the tracks is so dangerous," Officer Bradford reproached him. "It's the shortest way to reach my daughter's house. I'm supposed to watch my grandson today, but I woke up later than usual, and the snow, well, it makes everything worse," George added. "You should have asked her to bring the kid to your house," the officer suggested. "She used to do that, but her work has been so hectic, she has no time," George explained. "Yeah, well, I bet she'll find a time when you tell her what happened today. Come on, let's get you on my back and to the squad car. I'll drive you to her house," Officer Bradford stated. A few minutes later, they arrived at Julie's house. Mrs. Goldman had spotted the cop car from her window and came out of her house. She was carrying Joshua. "Oh my God, what happened?" she gasped. They explained everything, and she told Officer Bradford not to worry because she would take care of George and the baby. George told her he was fine, but Mrs. Goldman insisted. Julie called a few hours later after her meetings ended. George told her what happened, and she left work immediately. Dad, are you all right? I can't believe this. Oh my God." Julie bellowed and started crying on his shoulders. "It's okay, Julie. I'm okay. Don't worry." George comforted her. "Absolutely not. This cannot continue. You're coming to live with me. No more risking your safety on those train tracks. And I'll make sure you have the best automatic wheelchair available on the market," Julie declared with conviction. True to her word, George moved in with Julie a few days later. She rearranged her schedule to allow her to work from home 3 days a week, ensuring she would always be available for her father. "I won't let my job get in the way of spending time with you again, Dad. I give you my word," Julie promised him.